Hello there and warm welcome to all of you here on the news tonight, where we get you the day's top stories. I'm Tracy Shilshi, and in the next 30 minutes I'll be getting you all details from Nepal and also India's top stories and of course international news as well. But before that, the headlines. 4,500 dead and counting in Nepal, even as the country's Prime Minister fears the toll could cross 10,000. Teams step up relief and rescue operations while aid pours in from around the world. 2,500 more Indian nationals are pulled out of Nepal. Indian government assures efforts are on to evacuate more people from the devastated region by air and road. Home Minister Rajnath Singh advocates a strong anti-conversion law, assuring strong action against elements disturbing the secular fabric of the country. Security and connectivity issues dominate the India-Afghanistan talks as visiting Afghan President Ashraf Ghani holds discussions with Prime Minister Modi. New Delhi assures support to ensuring peace in the battle-scarred country. And in a major crackdown on foreign-funded NGOs, Home Ministry revokes licenses of nearly 9,000 foreign organizations, citing violation of FCRA norms and non-filing of returns. Nearly 4,500 people are now declared killed in the Nepal earthquake as rescue and relief operations pick up in towns as well as sub-mountainous areas. The Nepal Prime Minister himself said that the toll could rise beyond 10,000, with many areas still out of reach of rescue teams. Meanwhile, aid in the form of relief supplies has begun to pour into the country, but distribution remains a big challenge. Here are the latest details.
A faint sound of a victim trapped under rubble. Rescue ops mounted in seconds, a flurry of digging and excavation. Ultimately, a body or more pulled out. Some injured yet alive, some not so lucky, adding to a sharply rising death toll. Such stories are all too frequent amid the devastation in large parts of quake-ravaged Nepal.
It's very dangerous. I've been so scared. And the whole night we had these shakes. And the whole night you felt these rocks coming down. It's very, very scary.
Entire cities stand reduced to rubble, an ugly pile of bricks and electricity wires and collapsed buildings. This is Bhaktapur, once a rich conglomeration of ancient temples, many of them UN World Heritage Sites, a hub of Nepal's tourism industry. A UN estimate says nearly 8 million people have been affected by the earthquake, more than a quarter of Nepal's population.
We are living here not conveniently, but it's not easy to stay. And some old people and some other women, child, so they are getting sick, and we are not getting medicine and some rescue and support for us. So even in the open space we are living here. Very terrible.
It's worse in mountainous areas where avalanche alerts mean operations are frequently halted. Helicopters have been pressed into service in many areas, taking out injured people, flying in aid material. But it's a slow process. Many areas remain unreached even now. The only silver lining is still a faded one. Distribution of aid that's rushing in from around the world remains at a crawl. Supplies pile up at Kathmandu's Tribhuvan International Airport. Lack of equipment and expert personnel means appeals for help in many cases can't be met. Besides Nepalese police and paramilitary and locals, rescue teams from a large number of nations are involved in rescue work. More are being flown in. In many places, India's military forces and NDRF personnel are at the forefront of operations.
Fixed wing operation is happening 24/7. As far as the helicopter operations are concerned, we have started our operations yesterday onwards. with 6 helicopters here. We are increasing to 8 by getting 2 more helicopters to Barko and another air base northwest of Kathmandu. And so far we have rescued about 250 people and dropped 4 tons of relief material. And today the figure is likely to be more because the weather is slightly better than yesterday.
देखिए ये बहुत बड़ी त्रासदी आई है और जितने भी यहाँ पहाड़ी क्षेत्र हैं इस देश के वहाँ पे काफी जान और माल का नुकसान हुआ है और खास तौर जो ये पुरानी बिल्डिंग्स थी जो पुराने जमाने की बिल्डिंग्स थी लकड़ी की और मिट्टी की और ब्रिक्स की जो बनी हुई थी काफी वो ढह गई हैं.
The Indian ambassador to Nepal, along with the interministerial team that's been flown out from India, are also coordinating closely with rescue teams. As bodies pile up, authorities have started mass cremations on a war footing. Fears now arise of disease and a humanitarian crisis. Here too, it's a race against time, against strong odds. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
And here at Rajya Sabha TV, we're trying to get you every detail from Nepal. Rajesh Badal, our executive editor, is in fact joining us from Kathmandu. He's there getting us constant details. Rajesh, what is the situation on the ground vis-a-vis relief and rescue operations, and what are the efforts being made for relief material to be able to reach the affected people?
The ground situation about relief and rescue was I can say it's not very satisfactory, although Indian doctors, Indian Army are doing well, they are working day and night. But the situation in interior areas, I can say there is no relief work is going on. कोई पहाड़ों में जो गांव हैं वहां तक लोग नहीं पहुंचे हैं, बचाव दल नहीं पहुंचे हैं, मलबे में लोग दबे हुए हैं. And can you imagine a country of a national capital is living in without power, without water, without medicine? So situation is not very satisfactory, I can say, Tracy.
Absolutely. In fact, taking a closer look at the situation, not just in Nepal, a lot of Indians, of course, still stranded there. More than, in fact, 2,500 Indians have returned from Nepal since last night. India has asked its remaining citizens in the earthquake-hit country to remain patient, saying that each and every one of them will be brought back home. Over 6,000 Indians have been evacuated so far, and many of them have shared their horrific experiences of the disaster. Take a look.
On Tuesday, Indian ambassador to Nepal, Ranjit Rai, met the survivors of the massive quake that shook the region last Saturday. The survivors shared their ordeal with him and sought relief. Despite over 6,000 Indians returning home safely, there are still more to be evacuated, as the disaster is slowly turning into a humanitarian crisis of Himalayan proportion. Angst among those still left out is growing. But the government has assured to reach out to maximum people with relief.
जेंट्स सब है, सब लाइन में लगे हुए हैं. 4 घंटा 5 घंटा से लाइन में है, लेकिन कोई हम लोग को गाड़ी का कोई पता नहीं चल रहा है. कब आएगा, क्या आएगा, रात में जाएंगे, दिन में जाएंगे, कब जाएंगे, हमको कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है.
We stay about 5-6 hours there, but we didn't get the flight. We pay the money, then also we are not getting the flights. So again we came here, but we are standing 2-3 hours. We are not getting anything. Not the water also, or a single drop of water also we are not getting.
But on the ground, the NDRF and Air Force personnel are having a tough time tackling the challenges. Poor connectivity, lack of electricity, and frequent aftershocks and rains are hampering the operation. Lack of capacity at the Kathmandu airport prompted the government to go for optional route like roads. There are efforts to bring back stranded Indians on buses to the bordering states like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal. Thousands more have returned since Monday night.
Big movement of Indians was by road. Approximately 4,000 people came back, are on the way back. They were brought back. They are being brought back in 80 buses. We would like people to understand now is that the bus route is probably the best way of coming back because it is not affected by weather.
We've been standing there since 20 hours. And just one flight was there. So pathetic from our side and pathetic from their side also.
From their side?
No facility was there, no money with us. So it was horrible and terrible.
4 दिन का भूखा है हम लोग अभी, बाल बच्चे लेकर के ही भूखा आए हुए हैं. वहाँ खुला मंच है, उसमें हम लोग बैठ करके दिन रात बैठे हुए रहते हैं। आज भी भूकंप हुआ है वहाँ पर, जिस समय हम लोग चलने लगे उस समय भूकंप हुआ है।
An interministerial team comprising of senior officials from ministries of Home, Defence, External Affairs and NDMA are in Nepal to coordinate rescue and relief operations. The government hopes to evacuate more stranded Indians as well as foreigners out of the quake-hit country. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
In fact, Rajesh Patel still there with us from Kathmandu. Rajesh, what did you see on the ground, and give us a sense what further arrangements are being made by the Indian government to evacuate more Indian nationals from the devastated regions?
Tracy, Government of India ने काफी इसमें काम किया है, and Indian helicopters, Indian Army लगातार यहाँ के लोगों को निकाल के ले जा रही है, दिल्ली पहुंचा रही है। लेकिन अभी जो यहाँ एयर प्रेशर है, एयर ट्रैफिक का प्रेशर है, वो इतना अधिक है कि जितनी तादाद में लोग सुरक्षित जाना चाहते हैं वो वहां नहीं पहुंच पा रहे हैं। ऐसी सूरत में अभी एक दूसरा ऑप्शन आज ही शुरू हुआ है। बिहार से 20 बसें आई हैं, उत्तर प्रदेश से मदद आई है और बॉर्डर एरियाज पर कैंप्स लगाए गए हैं। तो ये जो बस और ट्रक जो आए हैं, उत्तर प्रदेश से जो आए हैं, बिहार से जो आए हैं, ये लोगों को ले जा रहे हैं और उनको सुरक्षित स्थानों पर पहुंचा रहे हैं। ट्रेसी।
All right, Rajesh Patel, thanks so much for joining us, getting us those details from Kathmandu. Remember, here on Rajya Sabha TV, we're getting you every detail possible from Nepal and the neighboring areas here in India. All right, on to the other big story of the day. The future of India-Afghanistan strategic ties, besides security and connectivity, were in focus as visiting Afghan President Ashraf Ghani met Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi today. PM Modi stressed on an end to support for violence for regional stability as both sides made a strong pitch for positive and constructive ties. Here's more.
A guard of honor and state reception for President Ashraf Ghani on his first visit to India 7 months after he took office in Afghanistan. A chance for Kabul and New Delhi to regain lost ground to regional rivals Pakistan and China and push interests including trade routes, arms sales and strategic ties, while also focusing on the fragile peace process in the war-torn country. One-on-one discussions with Prime Minister Modi and delegation-level talks followed. Modi said India-Afghanistan relations have blossomed despite challenges of geography and political hurdles. He conveyed India's support for his vision for peace and stability in Afghanistan.
We have a shared interest in the success of an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned process. This should be conducted within the framework of the Constitution of Afghanistan without the shadow of violence. It should be reinforced the political, economic and social progress of the last 14 years.
A central point is the three-way deal between Iran, India and Afghanistan to develop the Chabahar port in Iran. The Prime Minister expressed positives on this and other agreements in the pipeline.
We are also prepared to join the successor agreement to Afghan-Pakistan Trade and Transit Agreement. This will re-establish one of the oldest trading routes of South Asia. I also reaffirm my commitment to take the Chabahar port project in Iran forward. We will also quickly conclude a bilateral motor vehicles agreement.
Without naming Pakistan, Modi said reconstruction of the war-ravaged country required a constructive approach from the entire region. The Afghan president stressed on bringing the region out of the clasp of years of violence.
Peace, Mr. Prime Minister, is our significant goal because the shadow of terror haunts our children, our women, our youth. Terror must be confronted and must be overcome. We are determined to make Afghanistan the graveyard of terror. Terror cannot be classified into good and bad.
Earlier this month, India delivered 3 light helicopters to Afghanistan. India had also committed $2 billion to the reconstruction effort there. This visit looks to renew strategic as well as economic ties that had become frayed in recent years. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
And for more on this, let's speak to Suhasini Haider, who's the Foreign Affairs Editor with The Hindu, joining us, in fact, this evening from the capital. Suhasini, thanks so much for joining us. Give us a sense, really, of Ashraf Ghani compared to Hamid Karzai. You know, him actually visiting Pakistan and China first before India. Some reports saying that that had, in fact, irked New Delhi. Give us a sense of really how does he compare to a Karzai?
Well, two quick points, Tracy. To begin with, yes, the comparison is obviously very, very stark if you compare it to how President Karzai was towards the end of his term in terms of taking Pakistan head-on when it came to terrorism and to terror groups that are based in Afghanistan. Also in terms of his relationship with China not being quite as close as we're seeing between President Ghani and China. He's made that visit to China. China has said they are willing to mediate when it comes to talks with the Taliban. But I think the more fair assessment and the more fair perhaps comparison would be how President Karzai was when he first came into power or when he even came into his second term, and now President Ghani. He is spending the first few months of his tenure very clearly trying to make peace with all his neighbors. India is seen as a tried and tested friend which will always have goodwill towards Afghanistan, especially a democratic Afghanistan. And I think what President Ghani has been trying to say is that he does need to reach out to the neighbors that matter. Pakistan, with its proximity, with the kind of cooperation that is needed from Pakistan when it comes to tackling terror in Afghanistan and particularly in talks with the Taliban.
Yes.
And China, on the other hand, a development partner, a country that really can afford to rebuild Afghanistan, especially when it comes to infrastructure. So he's trying to make good with these countries, and certainly he has taken his time coming to India.
Yes.
I think what is going to follow in the next 6 months between Afghanistan and India and Afghanistan and its other neighbors are actually going to be more important.
All right. Also, you know, you mentioned about how Ghani actually wanted to reach out to the Afghan Taliban, in fact, setting a deadline of March this year. That, of course, hasn't happened. You've got a spring rise that has already taken place as far as the Taliban is concerned. And, you know, today talks on terror, of course, were in prime focus, as we always see between India and Afghanistan. Give us a sense of really where the countries lie as far as that's concerned, because the US, too, watching that closely.
Absolutely, and as the US plans or looks at ways of pulling out of Afghanistan, the focus is really going to be in how strong the Taliban can get. Look, President Ghani has made a departure from President Karzai. There are certain red lines he has been willing to cross that President Karzai wasn't, and that has been of concern to India. Namely, the fact that he is willing to speak to the Taliban without preconditions on them giving up violence. We haven't seen him put those conditions there before. Second, he has spoken of a Pakistani role, if you like, in talks with the Taliban. India has been very clear that this has to be an Afghan-led and an Afghan-owned process. So when it comes to talks with the Taliban, he has certainly taken a departure from the past.
Yes.
But is he going to be able to walk down that road, which is a departure, for too long? It all depends on whether Pakistan actually delivers in terms of putting enough pressure on the Taliban leadership that either lives in Pakistan or does have contacts with Pakistan, and bring them to the talks table. So the pressure right now, if you were to look at it that way, President Ghani is putting on Pakistan to say, let's see you now deliver. We've made good on our ties with you. We're no longer talking about terrorism emanating from Pakistan, but you have to deliver these very people who could set off another round of violence to the talk table instead.
All right. Very quickly, Suhasini, anything else that we can expect from you know, this visit of the President of Afghanistan?
Well, to be honest, the expectations were kept very low from the beginning. We know that the two sides wanted to sign a motor vehicles agreement as well as an extradition treaty, the mutual legal assistance treaty, as well as some Chamber of Commerce MOUs.
Yes.
They weren't able to do that. For some reason, the paperwork was not completed in time. I think you can see this really as a learning visit, where the two leaders are really looking at each other and saying, where do we want to go from here?
Yes.
And that discussion perhaps did happen today. Were there any big headlines from the visit? Not really, not this time.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Suhasini Haider, thank you so much for joining us, helping us understand India-Afghanistan ties a little better. Thank you for joining us. All right, we've got a quick break here, but still ahead, we'll get you national news. And Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool Congress has swept the state civic polls. We'll get you details of that in a bit.
Parliament ends the collegium system. Chief Justice of India refuses to join the panel. Judicial appointments put on hold. Will it lead to a constitutional crisis? Watch the big picture, 6:30 and 9:30 p.m. only on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. You're watching the news tonight. Now, Home Minister Rajnath Singh has advocated for a strong anti-conversion law in the Lok Sabha today. Speaking during the debate on grants to Home Ministry, Rajnath Singh said strong action will be taken against anyone trying to disturb the secular fabric of the country. He also said that the government is committed to ensuring internal security.
Replying to opposition's questions over the Ghar Wapsi program, Home Minister Rajnath Singh once again called for a strong anti-conversion law to stop religious conversions in the country. He said that it is the responsibility of the government to guarantee the safety of minorities. He also said the responsibility squarely lies on the state governments too.
और मैं समझता हूं घर वापसी हो, धर्मांतरण, इसको लेकर कम्युनल हार्मनी के ऊपर जो क्वेश्चन मार्क समय-समय पर लगता रहता है, तो शायद इसको दूर यदि हम करना चाहते हो, यदि ये सभी सदन सहमत हो, तो एक बार यह फैसला कर दे कि हम यहाँ एंटी कन्वर्जन बिल सर्वसम्मति सदन में पारित करेंगे। मैं समझता हूं कि फैसला हो गया।
The opposition demanded clarification from the government over recent attacks on religious institutions across the country. Parties urged the government to ensure the security of minorities.
तो हमको मिला विजय कुछ भी कर सकते हैं, विश्राम से मत सो, इतने समस्या आपके सामने है, सत्य से दूर मत जाओ, सत्य से कहो, जो चीज आपके सामने है देश के हित में, आप ये सब क्लैरिफिकेशन हमारे सामने रखिए।
Questions were also raised over the internal security challenges faced by the centre. Home Minister admitted that his ministry hasn't received funds to modernize police forces.
जो 14th फाइनेंस कमीशन की जो रिकमेंडेशन आई है, उसमें जो रिपोर्ट आई है, उसमें ये उसे समाप्त कर दिया है। वैसे ही इंटीग्रेटेड एक्शन प्लान, जिसे अब ACA कहते हैं, उसे भी समाप्त कर दिया है। CCTNS उसे भी समाप्त कर दिया है। लेकिन इस संबंध में हमारी प्रधानमंत्री जी से भी बात हुई है, वित्त मंत्री जी के साथ हमारी बातचीत हुई है, और हम लोग ये सोच रहे हैं कि इसका विकल्प कैसे तैयार किया जाए, कैसे इसका समाधान निकाला जाए, इस पर हम गंभीरतापूर्वक विचार कर रहे हैं।
The Home Minister also assured the House that the government is trying to prepare better to deal with natural calamities. After unseasonal rains, the government is facing crisis after massive earthquake that hit the entire northern part of the country. Shyam Sundar's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, days after the government cracked the whip against Greenpeace and Ford Foundation, the Home Ministry has cancelled the licenses of nearly 9,000 NGOs receiving foreign funding. The move is seen as an escalation of government control over NGOs for opposing views on economic policies. But the opposition has raised strong questions over the move, saying proper investigations of NGO funds are called for first.
This time it's a far bigger crackdown. Licenses of 8,975 entities cancelled. Citing violation of the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, the biggest such action under this law. The Ministry of Home Affairs says the decision was taken as the associations failed to comply with the regulation of filing annual returns. The ministry claims the associations were provided due time after notices were issued against them for not filing returns between 2009 and 2012. Lawyers and politicians backed government's decision for more transparency in the working of the foreign-funded NGOs, but they cautioned against victimization of those not in line with the government's policies.
इसमें अगर कोई राजनीतिक एजेंडा है कि जो सिर्फ जो सरकार को क्रिटिसाइज कर रहे हैं उनके खिलाफ एक्शन लेंगे, नेचुरली हम तो ये कभी मानेंगे नहीं, वी विल बी अपोजिंग इट। लेकिन अगर कोई ऑब्जेक्टिव न्यूट्रल प्रोसीजर है तो नेचुरली हम इसमें तो ये तो सरकार की जिम्मेदारी तो करनी ही चाहिए।
The government's actions have raised questions on this being a political method to contain the growing dissent and NGOs' campaign against many industrial projects.
It seems that the government seems to be targeting select organizations only when they find that these organizations are contributing to those smaller NGOs who are raising a critical voice of opposition and they are raising criticism. And I think that this is not in our democratic culture of our country.
It must not appear to the people of this country that such NGOs which are always finding fault or criticizing the government or pulling up the government for their misdeeds should not be at the receiving end and should not be victimized singularly.
Only last week, the government had suspended the FCRA license issued to Greenpeace India and frozen their 7 bank accounts. The ministry alleges the NGO had misused its foreign funds for political activities which affected the country's public and economic interests. The Home Ministry also put Ford Foundation, a powerful international NGO, under the prior approval category and also on its watch list in the interest of national security. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
On to West Bengal now. In Trinamool, Congress has swept the state civic polls. The party scored a landslide victory in the Kolkata Municipal Corporation polls, bagging 114 of the 144 wards and 69 of the 91 civic bodies in other parts of the state. The victory comes as another shot in the arm for Mamata Banerjee, who has been under attack over the Sharada chit fund scam. The victory is also significant for the TMC chief, who is hoping for a second term when the state votes for a new government in less than a year. However, opposition parties have raised a shrill pitch over allegations that the ruling party resorted to violence and adopted unfair means to win the polls. They've also called for a statewide shutdown in protest. Meanwhile, Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi visited Punjab today to meet farmers. He was accompanied by Congress leader Jyotiraditya Scindia. Rahul Gandhi interacted with farmers who are facing problem of wheat stocks not being lifted by government agencies at the Sirhind grain market. After hearing their grievances, the Congress Vice President also visited Madi Gobindgarh and finally reached Khanna, where he will spend the night. Farmers across Punjab are protesting the tardy lifting of wheat stocks and have blocked railway tracks in various districts since Monday.
पंजाब के जो किसान हैं, जो मजदूर हैं, वो अपना पसीना देते हैं, अपना खून देते हैं, देश को भोजन देते हैं और जब उनको जरूरत है, जब उनको मदद की जरूरत है, तो उनको यहाँ कोई मदद नहीं मिल रही है। उनको सही दाम नहीं मिल रहा है, गेहूं उठाया नहीं जा रहा है, यहाँ पे ओला गिरा था, उसका कॉम्पनसेशन नहीं मिला, पता नहीं किसकी सरकार चल रही है यहाँ पे।
And here are some quick updates from across the country. The National Green Tribunal has announced a fine of 5,000 rupees against individuals spotted burning garbage, leaves, plastic, rubber, etc. in open areas in the national capital. The new ban steps up the NGT's effort to curb the city's pollution. Earlier, it had passed a ban on diesel vehicles more than 15 years ago from plying in the city. Delhi Law Minister Jitendra Singh Tomar has been asked by Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal to explain the authenticity of his law degree. Tomar has been accused of using a fake certificate after Bihar University's statement in the Delhi High Court that there is no record of his law degree. However, Tomar rejected all the charges and alleged that it was a political ploy by opposition parties to malign the Aam Aadmi Party's image. And with that, let's take a look at some international news and updates in Global Buzz. Tension on the streets of Baltimore in the US was palpable on Monday after a night of violent protests throughout the city. A state of emergency has been declared cause of the unrest. Police have made 27 arrests so far but are finding it difficult to restore order. 9 drug traffickers, including 2 Australians, are to be executed by a firing squad in Bali later today. Andrew Chan and Mayuran Sukumaran were among 9 mainly foreign prisoners scheduled to be killed at 6 p.m. BST. Family members have paid their final visit to the duo and wailed in grief as empty white coffins arrived at the Besi prison. Indonesia has harsh punishments for drug crimes and resumed executions in 2013 after a 5-year gap. 6 have been executed so far this year. US President Barack Obama will host Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for White House talks on Tuesday to showcase newly strengthened defense ties and advance a long-delayed Pacific trade deal. The two allies also seek to counter China's rising influence in Asia. Abe will also address a joint meeting of Congress on Wednesday. And that's it on the news tonight. Good night.